Hey, good people, Batavia here. So I have garlic. I wanted to pop in and share with you how things went with my garlic this year. This is the third season that I've planted garlic and the second season that I've grown it successfully. So last year was a good garlic harvest. This year, really pleased. Just a couple of quick notes I want to share on what I grew, what I did differently compared to last year, and my overall harvest. All right, so we planted this garlic out. One of the differences was the very last week of November in 2022 compared to the previous year. I planted out like basically the first week of November. So I was a little bit nervous because I basically, we were going into winter in a few weeks. But the ground wasn't frozen yet. And me, so we were able to get the garlic planted, mulched, watered in, and then come spring, I'll put on screen the first signs, the date, because those kind of things matter to me as I'm kind of following along, like when should I expect to see it. Maybe different in your area, but again, just to share that with y'all. So I was really pleased. I had it in 3 separate spaces. Last year I planted it in one single bed that was about a 7 by 4 inch bed. And then this year I put it in 3 separate spaces. The largest space was a 4 by 4 foot bed. So kind of for reference, you don't need a lot of space to grow. And I also grew in 2 separate kind of 2-ish by 4-foot-ish spaces. So I was able to squeeze quite a bit in. I think for the sections that had the smaller footprint, I think I did crowd that garlic a little bit, and maybe that's the reason why I have a couple of bulbs that are smaller than the rest. But all in all, still very, very good outcome. So let me just get this situated. And I'm going to leave this here because I want to pull this out and show you all what this is separately. This is my soft neck garlic, which I think it's in part the gardener, me, that had something to do with the poor performance here. But from left to right, I have all hardneck, and this is German hardy. The red cloves, let's see, you may not be able to see that on camera. So it was just over 30 cloves that I planted, creating about 30-ish bulbs. So from what I can tell, everything I planted came up and produced. This is the Medici, and this is supposed to be like a hot or the spiciest variety, one of the spiciest varieties of garlic. So I'll be interested to see how I like that. It's my first time growing it. This is Music. So Music was grown in the 4 by 4 foot bed along with this soft neck over here. These 2 sets, one in each of the 2 foot by 4 foot space. So all things considered, this is what you can get out of a 2 foot by 4 foot space for garlic, right? And my intention is to have enough to save for seed garlic to plant this year in the fall, and then also to go into the recipes that I'm making, what I'm preserving. And I'm using, let's see, I think I have like 1 bulb of garlic from last year that I was kind of seeing like would it last, right? And it has gone a bit dry, right? So I don't know that I'll be able to maintain garlic fresh for a full year, but that's okay. There are a bunch of ways that you can use it and make good use of it. So let's see, what else do we have here? About 30-ish of each of the cloves. Oh, the German hardy, which I don't know, I just maybe, in this case, maybe bigger is better. This is an example of some of the bulbs, right? So this was a jumbo size clove. Like the bulbs they sent me were jumbo size. The cloves are larger when I pull them apart to plant them compared to the other 2 here that were ordered as large bulbs. Again, so the cloves were large, but not as large as the jumbo. And so that absolutely has an effect from everything I've read on how large your cloves will be, how large your bulbs will be that you're actually growing. I did also I wanted to share this. So I'm always in for a good garden experiment. So the question I had, garlic scapes, which is what this is. right? And everything I've read that says, harvest your garlic escapes. They're enjoyable. I love them. And they will, instead of them going to flower like this, what ends up happening is once you cut them, they start to put energy into developing the bulb, right? So that's what you want, right? You want basically, ultimately, to have the largest bulbs that you can as you're growing garlic. So these are uber small. It's that, you know what I mean. So these are pretty small compared to this. This is all music, right? So just looking at this, absolutely, there is logic in that. However, I have some that I did cut the scape off of, and they're just as small. So obviously not a scientific experiment. I wouldn't even say conclusive, but as a general practice going forward, I will absolutely cut all of the scapes off. I didn't leave these intentionally. These just kind of got lost in, the sway of the bed. And when I noticed it, I said, well, let's see what happens. All right, we planted out the cloves the last week of November. We harvested, let's see, on the 22nd or 23rd. Let's see today's date, 24th, on the 22nd of July. That's also about 2 weeks later than I harvested back last year. I know these dates are getting confusing me. In 2021, I planted garlic like around November 9th and harvested around July 9th, give or take a day. In 2022, I planted out around November the 27th, and I harvested the garlic July the 22nd, right? And I only did that because we had such a wet July, and I was trying to wait until the garlic dried a bit, so in the bed, I didn't want to pull out really wet garlic. In hindsight, I probably should have gone in and got the garlic out of the bed sooner. I did pull a couple of test bulbs, and I could tell that they weren't quite fully formed, and so that's why I left it. And then kind of, a few days pass, they get away from me. That's a great example of what I have going on here. So this is the Achillium red garlic. So soft neck variety, there were no scapes for the soft neck varieties, and the bulbs all in all are just smaller. But you can see like there's barely even a stalk left. This is where I probably could have harvested these even a month ago. I'm not sure that I'll grow this variety again. Some of the garlic bulbs are just so small, and then some of the garlic cloves in turn are small. And it's just easier to work, especially with garlic, with larger bulbs, especially if you're cutting or dicing or chopping by hand. Even just peeling alone, it's a little bit easier to work with when they're larger. Who knows, maybe I'll taste it and it'll be like the best garlic ever, and so then I'll be driven to grow it again. But that's how that fared. Okay, so next steps, we are going to get this garlic lined up on my shelving unit in the basement. It's one of those that I use for seed starting, and we're going to let this cure and the garlic dry up. So we don't want any of this green. We're going to let it dry up for probably 2 or 3 weeks. I'll leave it there until I can stop smelling the smell of garlic as I go downstairs to wash clothes. Like that's the hit, I think, where, the curing is complete. But no, we'll keep an eye on it. Again, we'll use what looks like it won't store well. We'll use that fresh. I'll probably also, depending on how many I have, basically it's going to be all of the Achillium red. But any of these other bulbs, I will probably chop up, maybe, process through a food processor and then freeze like in ice cubes, those trays. So we'll do that. And then we also have 3 spaces that are now open. Those 3 spaces, before I get there. So let's keep an eye on what we need to put aside for seed garlic. And it's my hope that, some of this garlic will be usable for seed garlic. I mean, some of these look really good. So once they get cleaned up, I'll be able to put those aside. And I really need to identify where I want to plant garlic next year. And maybe a better scheduling, they would go in at maybe late October, early November, and then come out of the garden to harvest. Probably again, early July is more ideal. So what area in the garden should I dedicate to that? And then thinking about what I'm going to plant after that, right? So that actually is a good segue. So we're here now, right? We're wrapping up July. This is what I'm filming now. The garlic was pulled. I have 3 open spaces. And so I'm going to focus on planting in one of them, and that's the 4x4 foot bed. And my intention is to, and I really want to try to do this today, my intention is to direct sow bush beans. As I kind of look around, I have beans in a few different places, and I may end up deciding that was plenty. But for now, it feels like I should have planted a few more bush beans. And I'm going to put those in those 4x4 foot bed. Challenges, roly-polies have been eating my seedlings all season long. So there's that. And then also growing season is starting to get shorter, right? Days are starting to get shorter. These bush beans that I have in a container, I think they produced in about 55 days or so. So all things considered, I have a lot of time left. I have like 100 days between now and my average first frost. But some of these summer crops, like a bean may not produce the day before you get a frost, right? Like when the temperatures get really, really cool. So we'll see. It's worth giving it a shot, I think. I thought about carrots there, that could be a good option there as well. A little bit longer of a time frame that they need to produce. So that's something to think about. I'm not sure. So I basically have about 4 or 5 days that I'm going to take and decide between, now and the end of the month. So all of that said, I appreciate y'all spending some time with me. As always, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to drop them below. Look forward to chatting with y'all, and I'll see you on the next one.